Departments of airlines and their interconnection with cabin crew. Introduction to this module. Every airline has several departments and each of these has specific jobs of their own. This module gives a brief idea about how different departments coordinate with each other for smooth functioning of the airline, and how cabin crews interact with each department to bring the best result for any airline to operate creditably with top-notch efficiency. Topics to be covered in this module are: In-Flight Services Department, Operations Department, Engineering Department, Personnel Department, Finance Department, Medical Department, Transport Department, Security and Vigilance Department, Stores and Purchases Department. Interaction of cabin crew with various departments. In-Flight Services Department. This department could be segregated in two sections that comprise of two categories of employees, such as cabin crew and catering section staff. The duty of cabin crew members is to look after the passenger service on board the flights, and the duty of catering section staff is to reach all needed supplies for the mentioned passenger service before the departure of the flight. Specific duties of cabin crew. 1. Welcoming the passengers. Each cabin crew member should realize that the passengers are the guests of their airline and they, as the representatives of the airline, are the hosts to these guests. This welcoming at the doorstep of the aircraft with politeness and a smile thus gives a first-hand impression to the passengers, and that affects to win their heart at the first instance. 2. Making passengers comfortable. Practically, passengers stay in tension till they are on board the aircraft, because after undergoing various formalities at the airport, and the cabin crew are required to soothe out a part of this last trace of the tension through their deeds, while welcoming the guests. This could be fulfilled by relieving them of the burden of their jacket, helping them stow their bag or finding a suitable space for that purpose, pointing out their seat and moving the seat belts apart. These are normally placed crossed on the seats for them to sit down. Serving them wet towels, with ice water in summer and hot water in winter, scented with eau de cologne, a welcome drink, chilled soft drinks or juice in summer and ready-made tea or coffee in. 3. Serving food to passengers. The cabin crew members are to present the foodstuffs with best of their charm and manners to the gourmets. In addition, the cabin crew members are to correctly decide the timings of their service and allow sufficient time for the guests to enjoy the meal. 4. Attending to passengers' needs. Creditable cabin crew members value and treat their passengers warmly. Again, as no part of the on-board service could be kept pending for being done later, there is hardly any scope of relaxation for the cabin crew in that respect for any crew member during the entire period of any flight. In an office, the files could be left behind to be completed next day, but in this case, all their services have to be dispensed by the cabin crew within the available time of the flight, with all certainty. 5. Taking care of passengers' sickness on board. Any person feeling uncomfortable, be it an ordinary air sickness or a first flight fear, or a major one like a heart attack or a diabetic coma, will be in need of support, and the crew members must provide all these supports at the earliest. Each cabin crew is trained in first aid on a mandatory basis to act in accordance with the situational demands. 6. Looking after passenger safety. Looking after the safety of the passengers during an emergency situation has got to be considered as the most important and requisite factor of the cabin crew's duty and responsibility. In an emergency situation, If the cabin crew members do not come up to the expected or exalted standard and/or lack in any way to perform their stipulated duty, the result might be far-reaching and might even turn fatal. 7. Specific needs of cabin crew. Cabin crew members are required to remain fresh and, more importantly, fully fit on board. An unfit crew member should never undertake any flight duty, because by failing to discharge his or her duties on board, in a state of unfitness, the crew member increases the workload of the other fit crew members of the flight, as there is no scope of keeping any job pending or incomplete on board, in anticipation to be finished later, as mentioned above. This factor does not occur with similar seriousness for the ground staff, and essentially is of more importance for crew members. Specific duties of catering section staff. The duties of the second section of employees of this department, such as catering section staff, are to reach the supplies needed for the mentioned passenger service before the departure of the flight, with the help of items such as foodstuff, beverage, equipment needed for passenger service, newspapers and magazines, pillows and blankets, etc. If the catering section staff fails to load the adequate supply, the cabin crew would not be able to execute a commendable passenger service. On the other hand, if the cabin crew with the satiated supply from the catering section do not perform adequately, the motive behind such creditable supply becomes useless. Teamwork is most desired and essential to upgrade the service quality of any airline.